Measures to mitigate risk in the agricultural sector to encourage greater confidence among key stakeholders have reached another stage. Regional policymakers and technicians met in Antigua earlier this month to deliberate on the planning, innovation, development and management of sustainable agricultural insurance scheme for the region. Agricultural Minister Matthew Walter says government is seeking to give insurance coverage to all persons involved in the agricultural sector.
Dominica should be looking for an entity, that would give coverage to all crops, not only crops, but we are talking about livestock, we are talking about fisheries, and we are also talking about forestry. Okay, because there are persons who are involved directly or indirectly in the forestry aspect of development, as well as fisheries, as well as crops, and we are looking at giving coverage to all those persons who are involved in the agricultural sector. The situation is that Dominica cannot do it alone because the risk is so great that Dominica cannot take up the responsibility to do it alone. This is why it is pertinent and imperative that we in the Caribbean consolidate our efforts and our energies, okay, and we come to the understanding that the way forward to respond to disaster risk mitigation is by coming together, working together, putting this entity in place that will be able to share the risk among us in order for us to be able to respond to individual farmers in every subsector within the agricultural sector.
The Regional Agricultural Insurance Symposium addressed the institutional challenges in disaster risk management in the sector by building the technical capacity of key stakeholders in the management of disasters. Mr. Walter has outlined some of the matters which were discussed at the symposium.
1. To strengthen the capacity of policymakers and technicians, development bankers, private insurance technicians and producers in the planning, innovation, development and management of a sustainable agricultural insurance scheme for the Caribbean. 2. To bring key stakeholders in the sector together to evaluate the challenges faced, example, policy, legislative, information, infrastructural, and the opportunities available, management tools including insurance for addressing the risk. And 3, to determine the main tenets of an overarching agricultural sector risk management strategy for the Caribbean with a focus on agricultural insurance. There were a wide range of presentations by regional and international experts on the state and outlook for agriculture data collection and requirements, the Caribbean hazard landscape, value chain management, public-private partnerships, and experiences with agricultural risk management in various regions to include Latin and Central America and the Caribbean.
Agricultural Minister Matthew Walter. The matter involving the election petitions filed by the United Workers' Party against the ruling Dominica Labour Party has been adjourned sine die, pending a decision as to whether the petitions will be struck out or allowed to go to trial. The United Workers' Party filed several petitions alleging voter bribery in several constituencies and challenging the legality of Prime Minister Skerritt's election based on the fact that he has dual citizenship. Yesterday, lawyer for the DLP Anthony Asafan argued in court that the petitions did not have supporting evidence and should be dismissed. In other news, past president of Carib Whale, Andrew Armour, is complimenting the Roosevelt's Carrot-led government for its decision to vote in support of the conservation of whales. Prime Minister Roosevelt's Carrot announced that Dominica will vote against the resumption of commercial whaling at this year's International Whaling Commission meeting, currently ongoing in Morocco. He says Dominica's decision to vote against commercial whaling coincides with Dominica's image as the nature isle of the Caribbean.
I think it's a big step forward, and I think it's the sort of thing that he has been in for the past few years, and we want to commend him on that. For a while, we thought that the islands were going to vote as a bloc, and therefore support Japan, which most of the other islands are doing. But we're really happy to know that they're actually going to be conservation-minded at the IWC meeting. Now, this is very important because the whole world is watching us, and they're watching us now more than ever, because the whole issue of the moratorium on commercial whaling is now at stake. And the Japanese are now trying to make a bid to change that. The Japanese, along with a couple other whaling nations. Most of the other people are against it. The major countries in the world are against it. But Japan has recruited all of the Caribbean islands, and Kitts, Nevis, and Vincent, St. Lucia, and before Dominica. So we thought that they were going to vote with these islands, and we're really happy that they're not. But the point is that everybody is watching these islands because they are vulnerable, because action can be taken against them because they are tourist-related islands. They need to do tourism to survive. And our move is basically telling the world that we are a nature island, and we're supporting what we're talking about with action.
Past president of Carib Whale, Andrew Armour. Meantime, Japan will consider walking away from the International Whaling Commission and setting up a rival organization. It was especially irked by the refusal of anti-whaling countries to discuss a small amount of commercial whaling by 4 Japanese coastal communities. A decision by a sister island to carbon copy a brainchild event of Dominica's dive industry has been deemed a threat. Trinidad and Tobago is putting on a similar event dubbed Underwater Carnival. Organizer of the annual Dive Fest and president of the Dominica Hotel and Tourism Association, Simon Walsh, says the concept for the Tobago Underwater Carnival is based 100% on Dive Fest.
So they saw what Dive Fest was doing over the last 17 years, modeled it, and basically have done the exact same concepts over in Tobago. The only difference is they're doing it in June. So the question, of course, one has to ask oneself is, and as you correctly ask, is this a threat to our Dive Fest? And the answer I'm going to give you there is going to be a little bit vague. In some ways it is, because what we have done is I think we have set the bar for organizing a dive festival. We're the longest running festival in the Caribbean. We have some of the most creative ideas for a dive festival. But the challenges that we've had in moving Dive Fest forward have been to do with our air access and the price of flying people down here in the month of July. So we are very, very severely constrained in the moving Dive Fest forward by air access issues. So when a place like Tobago takes on and has the same concept, without a doubt, they can surpass us in a much shorter time period because they're basing their carnival on our Dive Fest. One cannot blame them. You have to look around the region and base your festivals and your events and your whether it's an investment strategy and action plan or anything, you're basing it on what people in the region are doing. So one can't blame Tobago for basically taking our idea and running with it.
Walsh says the activity is also being constrained by air access and the price of tickets.
What we need to do is solve the problem of air access and the price of tickets to get down here so that we can start getting maybe 100 people to come down for Dive Fest. Many aspects of Dive Fest have been very successful. The one aspect that has not been that successful has been getting the tourists to visit for Dive Fest. We're getting regional people, we're getting diaspora coming back for it, but as far as getting divers coming down specifically for Dive Fest, we haven't had huge success in that area. Tobago, maybe 5 years down the road, will be obviously with a easier access, be probably greater number of people coming down for their dive festival.